Continuing on with this book, Swan Pond Island and the 13 Amigos. So, the next morning, the girls were invited to breakfast with the king's family. While they ate, a messenger came in with bad news. The people had been down to get water, and now Loki's helpers had somehow managed to bring in enormous river monsters with horrendously huge mouths and sharp teeth. As the messenger described these creatures, Mariah realized what they were. "Alligators," she cried. "Oh, good Lord, what next?" "You know about these creatures too, then?" Elijah asked her. "Well, maybe enough to help you be able to get water anyway," Mariah said. "You'll just have to get water in the daytime, and make sure you always have a person to watch for the alligators, to make sure they don't sneak up on you. Alligators generally feed at night or at dusk or dawn, so if you stay away from the river at those times and keep an eye out for them when you are there, you should be okay. Also, they're kind of looking for something bigger than us to eat anyways," Allison added. "Animals like possums and foxes will be in more danger than we are, but that doesn't mean they won't eat us if we're handy. Alligators have a one-track mind most of the time. Usually all they're thinking about is eating." The king instructed the messenger to teach the people the things the girls had just told them about their new challenge. Elijah sighed. "I still want to find a way to get rid of these river monsters." "If we can," he said to Mariah, "this is no way for our people to have to live, and if we could get rid of Loki's helpers in the process, that would be a great bonus." Mariah said. She looked at Perry, hoping for inspiration. "I might have something," Perry said, smiling mysteriously. "Come with me, I will show you." Full of curiosity, the 6 young people followed Perry out to the part of the forest near the river. He led them to a hollow up above a branch in a tree. Because Brittany's wings had not had time to heal yet, Ahijah and Allison had to help her get up the tree and into the hole. "Hide in here," he instructed them. "Hide and watch." They all huddled together to peek out of the hole in the tree. Soon they saw Gadrell, along with 4 or 5 other fairies, standing down by the river. They were feeding the alligators some kind of raw meat. "What are they doing that for?" Elijah asked Mariah. Mariah sighed. "They are feeding the alligators so that the alligators will associate the sight of fairies with food. This will make them more likely to eat us when we come down for water, even in the daytime." "Ugh," Elijah said. "Is there no end to their infernal mischief?" Suddenly they heard the sound of gobbling and of large wings flapping. Looking around the edge of their hole, they saw a gang of wild turkeys flying up to their part of the river bank. With much noise, they landed on the path that the fairies used to go to the river, not far from the tree, where Brittany, Allison, and Mariah were hiding with their friends. Now what?" Ahijah murmured. "I have no idea," Brittany said in a low voice, staring at the new development. The turkeys pecked at the ground, looking for bugs or small animals to eat. Loki's helpers were so distracted by the arrival of the large turkeys that 2 of the alligators ate 2 of them while they were staring at the turkeys. Alerted by the muffled screams of their teammates, the others turned to see, then fled from the alligators, straight into the path of the turkeys. The turkeys quickly snatched up the rest of them. As they stared at the scene of this carnage, Perry suddenly nudged Allison and pointed up the path. "Oh, crud," Allison whispered. "Abijah, look, some of your people are coming to get water. They're going to get eaten by the turkeys and the alligators. All of their appetites are primed." Without another thought or word, the boys all leaped out of the tree and flew straight for the crowd of approaching villagers. "Run, back to the village," they shouted. But the turkeys, alerted to a new food source by the taste of Loki's followers, had already noticed them. As the turkeys dropped into the crowd of fairies, the fairies, having had that split second of warning, jumped into the air and scattered in every direction. The boys lunged at the turkeys with their swords, hoping to inflict enough pain to make the turkeys have second thoughts about their new prey. But they were sorely outnumbered, and many of the turkeys continued to pursue the hapless fairies in the different directions that they had fled. "Perry," Mariah shouted, "what can we do?" "Get the trumpet from Elijah that he uses to call his people together," Perry instructed her calmly. "Go back to the river bank and use it to call all the people together to you. They can lure the turkeys into the reach of the hungry alligators." Mariah leaped out of the hole and flew to find Elijah, where he had his hands full with the double task of staying out of reach of the turkeys' claws and beaks while trying to disable them by stabbing their eyes. Mariah also had to stay alert to keep from being eaten as she flew amid the fray. "Elijah," she called. "Quick, hand me the trumpet." Glancing at her quickly, Elijah took his trumpet off his belt and flung it in her direction with one hand while continuing to slash and poke with the other. Unfortunately, it fell in the grass. She couldn't look for it with all these turkeys all around trying to eat her. "Guys," she called out, "take the turkeys to the alligators. Allison, come help me find this trumpet." As the boys quickly figured out her plan and led the turkeys that they were fighting away to the river bank, the girls looked in the grass until they located the missing trumpet. Grabbing it triumphantly, Mariah flew toward the river bank after the boys and their turkeys. The boys were finding it a bit complicated to lead the turkeys into the alligators' mouths without landing there themselves, but thankfully the turkeys were so focused on their prey that they forgot to watch out for danger, and the alligators were still looking for food. Eventually, by actually alighting on the top of the alligator snouts, the boys were able to bring the alligators together with their turkey dinner. They had to be very quick and nimble about leaping back into the air as the alligators snapped up the turkeys, though, in order to avoid being alligator lunch as well. Finally, Mariah flew above the alligators and blew the trumpet. She flew above the alligators and blew the trumpet. The boys and Allison joined her at the spot where she hovered just out of reach of the alligators. As the excited alligators below snapped at them, the fairy friends jumped a little higher to stay out of reach. Soon the crowd of fairy villagers came together from every direction, hotly pursued by their turkey predators. "Oh crap," Mariah muttered at the sight of all those turkeys coming right at them. "This could get tricky," Allison agreed as she hovered beside her. "Okay now," Perry instructed them. "This is your chance to lure the alligators back down the river using the turkeys. Get the whole crowd to lead the turkeys on, bit by bit, down the river, close enough to the river that the alligators see them, but not so close that they all get eaten right away." Zipping over to a new place on the bank downriver, Mariah again blew the trumpet. Everyone followed her there, with the turkeys still following, perhaps a little slower than they had been before, as they were starting to weary of the chase of this tiny, agile prey. In the meantime, the boys had a chance to scatter throughout the crowd and quickly shout what the plan was to them so they could all get on the same page. By now they had to slow down a bit so the turkeys wouldn't lose hope and give up the chase altogether. It was a fine line between being close enough that the turkeys wouldn't give up, but far enough away that the fairies wouldn't get eaten. After a while, they had finally led the turkeys a good distance away, and thankfully there was a huge spread of blueberry bushes there, much to the fairies' relief, since by now they were exhausted as well. The turkeys quickly decided the stationary blueberries would make a far better lunch than the elusive fairies. While the hungry turkeys were busy gorging themselves on blueberries, the fairies slipped away into the surrounding vegetation. Finally, they had time to check to see where the alligators were and if the plan had worked. Sure enough, helped by the falling dusk and the working up of an appetite from all that swimming, the alligators had not lost interest in the turkeys, but had followed them all the way down here. With any luck, the turkeys would continue to lead them downriver in the coming days as well. As soon as the fairies were far enough away from the turkeys and alligators to feel safe, they collapsed in a heap in the grass. After resting a while, they went back to pick up Brittany and head for their welcoming beds in the village. So, we still have a few minutes.
Thank you for watching, Levi.
I'm going to read a little bit of Chapter 4. Lunar Adventures. Holly, Kristen, and Sydney blinked as they stepped out onto a bright white powdery ground and looked out into a black sky. Nearby stood a man who looked similar to Josh, except for with the blonde hair and beard. "Hey," he greeted them, coming over to shake their hands. "The name's Yuri." "Hi, Yuri," they all said as they shook his hand. "So, why are we here?" Sydney asked Yuri. "Wait," Holly interrupted before Yuri could even respond. "Are we on the moon? Because I see something in the sky over there that looks an awful lot like Earth." Yuri laughed. "Yes, this is Earth's moon." All the girls stared in awe at the Earth's beauty from this perspective. Soon Yuri turned their attention back to the question of why they were there. "Come, I want to show you something," he said. Curiously, the girls followed him. Soon they saw a transparent, rigid half-bubble on the ground in front of them, about knee-high at its highest point. They all squatted down around it for a better look. Inside they saw small trees, tiny bushes, and minuscule flowers, with little paths in amongst the plants, as if the bubble contained a park for very small people. After a bit, they also noticed here and there around the edges transparent tubes that led into holes in the ground. Suddenly, they noticed that several very small people were running to the tubes, stepping into them and disappearing from sight. Then they saw a black, spotty, mildew-like substance rapidly spreading throughout the park and up the sides of the bubble. Yuri spoke. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to become like the small inhabitants of this world, stop Luki's followers from continuing to do what you just saw them do, and heal the little moon people from the sickness that this mildew causes, and help get rid of the mildew. They just destroyed that beautiful little park, Kristen exclaimed indignantly. How are they doing that? They are secretly growing the mildew in their den that they work out of, Yuri replied. Then they transport the mildew in airtight containers to the place they wish to destroy, remove the lids, and leave the containers of mildew to do their destructive work there. The mildew makes the moon people very sick and is causing many deaths. How can we cure the sickness and get rid of the mildew? Sydney asked. Yuri pointed to someone standing nearby whom they had not noticed before because he was nearly invisible. This is Perry, Yuri introduced them. He will go with you to help you on your mission. To cure the sickness, you must touch Perry and touch the sick person at the same time. To get rid of the mildew, there is a substance in their underground world that Perry will help you find that will eat the mildew and leave any surface without a trace of mildew left. But how will we stop Luki's followers? Holly asked. Unless we stop them, we will be fighting a losing battle. And what will they do to us if this is what they're doing to their own world? You will have to follow Perry step by step for that, Yuri replied, and you will have to draw your courage from him as well. Holly, Kristen, and Sydney looked at each other. We have to help them, Kristen said. We can't let this kind of evil win. Holly and Sydney agreed, although a bit nervously. They all looked expectantly back at Yuri to see what the next step was. Yuri smiled. Come with me, he said again. This time he led them to a clear tube entrance, like the ones they had seen in the park, only on a much larger scale. It was a tube entrance that they could all walk into, but the hole where it went into the ground was very small, like the ones they had seen in the little park. With a smile, he turned to them and gestured with his hand for them to go in. Taking a deep breath, they looked at Perry, who smiled at them and led the way. Then the girls followed him into the tube entrance, where a transparent door closed behind them as they all shrunk down to moon people size. As they looked at each other, they started to giggle because their appearance had also changed. Their skin was now as white as the moon dust, with little brown freckles here and there, and their hair was suddenly super long, like Rapunzel-type long hair. Oh, let me do your hair, Holly exclaimed to Kristen. Right now? Kristen exclaimed. We have a world to save. Well, I don't know about you, Sydney said, but I don't want my hair dragging through all that mildew. Besides, if we have to run for our lives from those bad guys, they'll catch us for sure with all this hair streaming out behind us. There is some travel time involved, Perry intercepted. You can fix hair on the way once we get out underway. Perfect, Holly exclaimed. So they all stepped further into the tube, where it dropped into the ground. Now they could see that there was a round thing, apparently blocking the tunnel, but there was a light coming from the small hole that led into the round thing. Perry dropped through the small hole, and they all followed. To their surprise, they landed with a soft plop onto a memory foam type floor in a round room lit with a pleasant yellow light that seemed to come from everywhere. As they all got settled, sitting on the cushy floor, they could feel the room starting to move down the tunnel, slowly at first, but gradually picking up speed. Holly had Kristen sit in front of her so she could begin braiding her now long and flowing hair. By the time they began to feel the room slow to a stop, Holly had braided and tied up out of the way Kristen's hair and Sydney's hair and her own hair. They were ready for action and adventure. As the room came to a complete stop, a small circle of the floor sunk down and slid away out of sight, revealing a small hole in the center of the room very similar to the one by which they had entered the room. Again, Perry led the way by dropping through this hole. The girls followed one at a time, each landing on a platform about the size of the room that they had traveled in, but covered with that same memory foam flooring that had covered the floor in the room. Stepping off the platform, they surveyed their new surroundings. Okay, I'm going to stop here.